everyone, welcome to upscprep.com. My name is Neelam Bhatia and this particular video is dedicated to help you understand some of the important amendments to the Indian Constitution. The idea is not to tell you that you don't have to go beyond this, but these are some amendments that you must know so that you secure that one question which comes every year from these amendments and help you write your mains this year. So let's get started, my dear students. The first amendment that we'll be talking about is the first Constitutional Amendment Act of 1951. So understand a little background of this amendment. We were in a phase where we were just an independent country. So there were a lot of social and economic programs and policies that government had to bring in. For example, it wanted to ensure representation for the scheduled caste and the scheduled tribe population. Not only that, it wanted to bring in a lot of land reforms for that matter. So what was happening was some of the provisions of the Indian Constitution were coming as an hindrance to this implementation. For example, whenever government was trying to bring about some of the social welfare policies, right to equality was quoted as being violated. So reservation policies were questioned. Land reform was questioned based on right to property. Nationalization was questioned based on right to trade. So considering this, the background of first Constitutional Amendment Act was to make the parliament, the government, powerful enough so that it can implement some of the social and economic provisions like reservation for backward classes, land reforms, and bring about certain changes with respect to freedom of speech and expression. Now that you know the background, let us go into the provisions one by one. So what First Amendment Act did was it added a new provision to Article 15, and it said that the government is empowered to create special provisions for the socially and economically backward classes, and if the government is doing so, it will not be considered as a violation of right to equality. So empower किसको किया गया? It was the state that was empowered to bring in special provisions for the advancement of socially and economically backward classes. Similarly, there were a lot of land reforms that had to be introduced. So for this, government came up with something called as the 9th schedule. Basically, ये बोला गया that if there is any act that is passed by the parliament and it is put in 9th schedule, then in that case, it will be away from judicial review. So it was like an immunity that was given to any act that was put in the 9th schedule. Once you have put anything in the 9th schedule, you will not be able to review it, which meant that it was protected from any kind of judicial scrutiny. And if there is no judicial scrutiny, it cannot be declared null and void. Similarly, my dear students, there was introduction of Article 31A and 31B, again to give government the power to make any changes that will shield the act from judicial scrutiny. All right. And also, if there were any land reforms, as per Article 31A, it will not be considered as a violation of right to property. Similarly, my dear students, it was seen that the freedom of speech and expression was being used to create nuisance, to disturb public order. Considering this, it was said that freedom of speech will now have some reasonable restrictions. So new restrictions were added to freedom of speech and expression. And what were these? Public order, friendly relations with foreign states, and incitement to an offense. So you have freedom of speech and of expression, but there were three new reasonable restrictions added. One being public order, second being friendly relation with foreign states, and third being incitement to an offense. The idea was these restrictions are reasonable, but yes, they are subject to judicial review, meaning it can be scrutinized by the judiciary to see whether the restriction imposed was reasonable or not. Finally, my dear students, nationalization was to be done. So this amendment said that any attempt at state trading or nationalization by the government will not be seen as a violation of right to free trade or business. So basically, again, the entire provisions of First Constitutional Amendment Act were made to empower the government. If you think it this way, you'll be able to recall better. So quick revision, my dear students. One, state was empowered to make advancement for socially and economically backward classes. There was introduction of 9th schedule to create an umbrella unit whereby you can be protected from judicial scrutiny. Three new clauses were added as reasonable restrictions to freedom of speech and expression, that is, public order, friendly relations with foreign state, and incitement to an offense. These restrictions were considered to be reasonable and subject to judicial review. Similarly, state trading and nationalization was permitted, and it was said that it should not be seen as a violation of right to trade or business. Now, the second amendment that we'll be talking about is the Seventh Constitutional Amendment Act of 1956. Now, my dear students, once we got independent, the states of our country were divided in classifications of A, B, C, and D. So, it was based on the fact that some were British provinces, some were princely states, some were, for example, Andaman and Nicobar was a separate category. But the point was, this division was neither efficient nor did it make any sense for an independent country to be divided in these groups. So, the first thing that Seventh Amendment Act did was it abolished this classification of states into parts like A, B, C, D. Rather, we organized it on the basis of language and culture, and therefore, India had 14 states and 6 union territories. So, first thing that happened was classification of states was abolished, the part structure ABCD was abolished, and now we had 14 states and 6 union territories which were categorized on the basis of language and culture. One more thing that was done was, so far high courts did not include jurisdiction to union territories, but with this amendment the jurisdiction of high court was extended to include the jurisdiction of union territories also. Similarly, it was said that two or more states can have a common high court. So, for example, Punjab and Haryana have a common high court which takes care of both Punjab as well as Haryana. One more thing that was done was it was permitted to have additional and acting judges to the high court so that the workload of the judiciary could be managed. So, quick recall, the ABCD classification was abolished. States were reorganized on the basis of language and culture into 14 states and 6 union territories. The jurisdiction of High Court now included union territories as well. Also, it said that the common High Court can take care of two or more states. Similarly, the appointment of additional and acting judges in the High Court was permitted. Now, let us move to a super important amendment to the Indian Constitution, that is the 42nd Amendment Act of 1976. A little trick to remember this is, if you add 4 plus 2, it translates into 6. So 4 plus 2 is 6. That's how you can remember 42nd Amendment Act came in the year 1976. Now again, understand a little background. This comes up when India is under national emergency during the Indira Gandhi regime. So definitely whatever amendment will be introduced will be done to empower the union government, to give it a lot of powers, in fact overriding power to control the entire country. So many changes were brought about by this amendment, so much so that it is also called as mini constitution. Why mini constitution? Because this one amendment alone brought about a lot of changes to the Indian constitution. One thing that was done was amendment to Indian preamble. Three new words were added to Indian preamble. One is socialist, one is secular, and one is integrity. So, three new words were added to Indian preamble: socialist, secular, and integrity. Then, fundamental duties were introduced. There was a new part to the Indian constitution, that is part 4A. Now, so far, whenever Council of Ministers gave an advice to the president, there was a supposition that some kind of a discretion would be allowed. Now, if you read the text of the Indian Constitution, it says that the president has to act in aid and advice of the Council of Ministers. But there was an ambiguity to the fact that in case the aid and advice is tendered, can the president reject or accept it? This was absolutely resolved by the 42nd Amendment Act, and it was said whatever advice will be tendered to the president. Now, look at the use of the word: the president must act in accordance to that advice. So you no longer had the discretion or any kind of an ambiguity to decide whether the advice has to be agreed to or not. So whatever advice has been given to the president must act in accordance to that advice only. Also, my dear students, a very important and rather a very controversial thing happened. It was declared that the constitutional amendments are beyond judicial review. Meaning, if government brings about any constitutional amendment, it cannot be under judicial scrutiny. So if there would be no judicial review, definitely you cannot check on the fact that whether that constitutional amendment violates the provisions of the constitution or not. Similarly, my dear students, is stated that the laws implementing directive principles of state policy cannot be invalidated for violating fundamental rights. Meaning, if the government is trying to implement some provisions of the DPSP and in the process is violating fundamental rights, it is absolutely okay. It would not be considered as a violation of the fundamental rights. So even if fundamental rights are violated and DPSPs are implemented, that is no problem at all. It will not be declared null and void. Not only that, 3 new DPSPs were also added by the 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act of 1976. Not only that, the life of Lok Sabha and state legislative assemblies was increased from 5 years to 6 years. From 5 years, it was made to 6 years. It was also said that we can have all India judicial services now. On the lines of Indian administrative services and Indian police services, we can now have all India judicial services also. Also, it was said that there would be establishment of administrative and specialized tribunals. Administrative tribunal to take care of civil services dispute and specialized tribunal with regards to certain specific matters, for example, tax. And this would be in part 14A of the Indian Constitution. So quick recap, 3 new words to Indian preamble: socialist secular integrity, introduction of fundamental duties by part 4A, mandatory for the president to act in aid and advice of the Council of Ministers, and it was no ifs and but attached. It also said that constitutional amendments are beyond judicial review, so there cannot be any scrutiny on it. It also stated that the laws which implement DPSP cannot be questioned on whether they violate fundamental rights or not. 3 new DPSPs were added. Now there's a little homework for you here. You have to tell me which 3 DPSPs were added and you have to let me know in the comment section. This will also tell me whether you've been following along or not. Also, my dear students, it's extended Lok Sabha and State Legislative Assemblies tenure from 5 years to 6 years. There was also creation of All India Judicial Services and administrative and specialized tribunals under part 14A of the Indian Constitution. Next amendment that we are going to discuss is 44th Constitutional Amendment Act. Now again, understand the background. We just had the 42nd Amendment Act in the year 1976, which came during the time of emergency. 44th comes after the emergency has been removed. So it will come to do away with some of the wrong changes that were brought about by the 42nd Amendment Act of 1976. So it would be an attempt to restore the wrongdoings, make them correct. And one more trick that you can remember to use to remember this is 44th, 4 plus 4 is 8. So that's how you can remember that 44th Amendment Act came in the year 1978. Now, first thing that it did was the extension of Lok Sabha and State Legislative Assembly to 6 years was restored to 5 years. So the term was increased to 6 years and it said now, no, it will be of 5 years only. Now by 42nd Amendment Act, the quorum requirement was removed. What is quorum, my dear students? The minimum number of people that should be there in the assembly, in the house for the house proceedings to continue. Now quorum in our case is 10%. However, by 42nd Amendment Act, it was removed. And it was restored by 44th Amendment Act. It said no, there will be quorum requirements in Parliament and state legislature. Similarly, my dear students, there were a lot of provisions with regards to parliamentary privileges that had references to British House of Commons. So, for example, it was written that the parliamentary privileges of the members would be like that of British House of Commons. Now, it of course does not make any sense to have any linkages to British House of Commons in an independent country like India. So all these references to British House of Commons was removed and now we no longer had references to British House of Commons with respect to parliamentary privileges. Again, my dear students, it was said that now you can freely report the parliamentary proceedings and you should not be afraid to do so. Constitutional protection will be granted. This was again done to restore the press freedom that was hampered by 42nd Amendment Act. Now, if you remember, my dear students, I told you that by the 42nd Amendment Act, it was said that the aid and advice given to the president will be mandatory for the president to accept. Now, one layer of protection was added, and it was said that whenever the president receives the advice of Council of Ministers, he or she can send it back for reconsideration. So once you can send it back for reconsideration. However, if it is not accepted, your advice is not accepted, and it is returned to you without any changes, then it would be mandatory for you to accept it. So basically, it was said that you can send the advice back for reconsideration. However, if the revised advice will be binding on the president to accept. Now, my dear students, by the 42nd Amendment Act, it was said that the ordinances brought in by the president, the governor, and the administrators will be outside the scope of judicial review. But again, 44th Amendment said that even on ordinances, judicial review is possible to see whether there was some malified intentions for the promulgation of that ordinance or not. If you remember, the power of the judiciary was hampered by 42nd Amendment Act. 44th Amendment Act restored it by saying that judicial review will be done by the Supreme Court and the High Court. So all the constitutional amendment will be now under judicial scrutiny. Now, the 42nd Amendment Act, my dear students, was imposed, the 1975 emergency was imposed on the ground of something called as internal disturbance. Now, it was realized that internal disturbance is a very vague word. Anything can be called as internal disturbance, even though the matter might not be that serious. So it was said that instead of using the word internal disturbance, we'll be using the word armed rebellion to ensure that emergency is only imposed when there is some serious threat to the country. So the word internal disturbance was replaced by armed rebellion. Also, it said that for the president to declare national emergency, it would be mandatory to have the written recommendation of the cabinet. So it was seen during the 1975 emergency that just by a phone call to the president had to impose an emergency, which was seen as a violation of constitutional principles. It was made mandatory that unless the president has the written recommendation of the president of the cabinet, the president will not be able to declare national emergency. Also, there was some procedural safeguard made with regards to the imposition of national emergency. For example, it had to be ratified within a month's time to ensure parliamentary concurrence with respect to imposition of national emergency. Also, right to property was removed from being a fundamental right, and it now became a legal right under Article 300A. Also, it was said that even when national emergency is in operation, two articles cannot be suspended. So, two fundamental rights, even during emergency, will be protected, and that would be Article 20 and Article 21. Previously, my dear students, the court the court's power to scrutinize any election related disputes of people like president, vice president, and prime minister was taken away by the 42nd Amendment Act. This was restored, and it was said that the courts can adjudicate election related disputes of even high dignitaries like president, vice president, prime minister, and speaker. So, of course, it is understood that the 44th Amendment Act was introduced to kind of correct the mistakes of the 42nd Amendment Act of 1976. Next amendment that we must know is the 52nd Constitutional Amendment Act of 1985. Now, it is super important and super easy to remember. This was the time when we were seeing a lot of defections happening. What is defection? Let's say you have been selected on party ticket A, you've been elected on party ticket A, and once after being part of the parliament, the Lok Sabha or the legislative assembly in case of states, you decide to shift parties. So defecting from one party to another became a trend, so much so that people overnight changed parties. To stop this trend, there was an entire amendment introduced, which is the 52nd Amendment Act of 1985, which talked about how if you defect from one party to another, it will be considered as a disqualification. So there were certain rules established as part of defection for members of parliament and members of legislative assembly. Also, to ensure this, we had an entire schedule to the Indian Constitution added, that is the 10th schedule to the Constitution, which talked about all the provisions with regards to anti-defection in detail. So 52nd Amendment Act 1985 talked about disqualification of MPs and MLAs for defection and introduced a new schedule to the Indian Constitution, that is 10th schedule. Next is 61st Constitution Amendment Act of 1988. Now what this did was, voting age in India was at 21 years. So it lowered the voting age from 21 years to 18 years in Lok Sabha and state legislative assembly elections. So 61st Amendment Act of 1988 lowered the voting age from 21 to 18. Easy to remember. Alright. So the next important amendment that you must know is the 73rd and the 74th Constitution Amendment Act of 1992. Why they were introduced was to ensure grassroots democracy in the country. So the idea was democracy should be able to reach the last mile, and that can be done when we have organized system of panchayats and municipal corporations in the country. Now, don't think that before this no panchayats existed. Definitely, there were panchayats existing before the 73rd and the 74th Constitutional Amendment Act. However, what 73rd and 74th Amendment Act did were they constitutionalized the Panchayati Raj institution, meaning now Panchayati Raj institutions were mandatory to be established as per the provisions of the Constitution. So, this can be a prelims line that 73rd Amendment Act constitutionalized the Panchayati Raj institutions. They always existed, but they became uniform and it became constitutionally mandatory to have Panchayati Raj institutions. For this, a part 9 to the Indian Constitution was added from Article 243 to 243O. Remember, part 9, 243 to 243O. A new schedule was added to the Indian Constitution, that is the 11th schedule, and it had 29 functional items. So new part 9, Article 243 to 243O, 11 schedule, 29 functional items, and constitutionalization of Panchayati Raj institutions. The next amendment that you must know is the 74th Amendment Act, which added a new part, that is part 9A. This was with regards to municipal corporations. The articles that you need to remember is 243P to 243ZG. Also remember, a new schedule was added. This was 12th schedule and it had 18 functional items with regards to municipalities. These items are the subjects on which they will be working or framing laws on. So 73rd and 74th, constitutionalization of Panchayati Raj and municipal corporations. Remember part 9, part 9A. Also remember 11th and the 12th schedule. Also remember 29 functional items and 18 functional items, and you will be sorted. The next important amendment is the 100th Constitutional Amendment Act, which came in the year 2015. Now, this came to solve a very unique problem. That was the problem of enclaves. So, what was this problem? See, when India and Bangladesh territorial boundaries were created, there were a lot of areas which were not resolved. So, you can think of it like this. There was an enclosed territory within India where Bangladeshi population was living. Although territorially this area fall into India. So this enclosed area where Bangladeshi population was living in India can be thought of as an enclave. Similarly, there were certain areas in Bangladesh where Indians were living. Now the problem was these people were virtually stateless. Why? Because they could not take benefit of the state of either India or Bangladesh. So they were reeling under a lot of difficulties, a lot of problem. Considering this, very long ago, we had something called as the Land Boundary Agreement, that is in the year 1974, which said that we'll be exchanging these enclaves and we'll be sorting our boundaries with regards to India and Bangladesh. But the problem was in its implementation, because to do this, we had to make constitutional amendments. Without constitutional amendment, you cannot cede a territory of India to any other nation. Now, considering this, my dear students, there was an amendment to the Indian Constitution made in the year 2015. The objective was to implement the land boundary agreement that was signed in the year 1974. After this constitutional amendment, 111 enclaves from India were given to Bangladesh and 51 enclaves from Bangladesh came to India. And also, this had made changes to the first schedule of the Indian Constitution. Why first schedule, my dear students? Because first schedule talks about territories of India. So if you look at the first schedule, it has details of the territories of India, the boundary that is there with the states, what all area is there in the country. So since there was this amendment, there was this exchange of enclaves, changes were made to the first schedule, which was done through the 100th Constitutional Amendment Act of 2015. Definitely it strengthened the relationship between the countries because this long pending disputes was solved by the 100th Constitutional Amendment Act of 2015. Now, those of you who have been part of my classes or otherwise also, I have a question for you. You tell me, whenever we have to secede a territory from India to any other nation, we require a constitutional amendment for it. Can you tell me which article of the Indian Constitution has this provision? I have a hint for you. It is either Article 2 or Article 3. Can it be Article 4? That is what I want you to answer in the comment section. Alright, so the next Constitutional Amendment Act that we'll be discussing is the 101st Constitutional Amendment Act of 2016. Now, this act was about introduction of goods and services tax. Now, the problem before the introduction of goods and services tax was there were a lot of indirect taxes in the country. So, there were definitely cascading effect of these taxes, tax ke upar tax, which led to cascading effect. Not only that, we were not able to integrate the country due to different tax being imposed in different areas. Also, it was very cumbersome, tiresome procedure to have so many indirect taxes being imposed. To solve this problem, GST was introduced, which subsumed all these indirect taxes into one umbrella tax called as the goods and services tax. The idea was to create a single indirect tax that will be replacing multiple taxes like VAT, excise, service tax, etc. into one single indirect tax. For this, a GST council was also created so that GST matters could be regulated and also it could decide. See, so since the states were agreeing for the implementation of GST and some of these taxes were imposed by the state, so they were beneficiaries of it, this was leading to some of the revenue losses. So it was decided that a compensation mechanism would be decided so that these losses could be covered up. For this, remember, there was amendment to Article 246A, 269A and 279A. You don't need to go into the details of these articles, but it is super important to memorize them. You can get a question around it. So 246A, 269A and 279A. What was the result? It created a unified indirect tax system across the country. So irrespective of the state that you come from, there was a single taxation structure created. It also removed cascading effect of taxes, that is tax ke upar tax, which led to unnecessary burden. So that was removed. Also, it strengthened cooperative federalism by having better relationship between union and the state. At least that was the objective. How was this objective met? Through the functioning of the GST Council. This was by the 101st Constitutional Amendment Act of 2016. The next amendment that you should know is the 102nd Constitutional Amendment Act of 2018, which gave constitutional status to National Commission for Backward Classes. My dear students, before this, it was a statutory body, meaning it was framed by the legislation of the parliament, which meant any changes could be brought about by a simple legislation of the parliament. Considering this, the status of National Commission for Backward Classes was upgraded from being just a statutory body to a constitutional body. A new article was inserted and that was Article 338B. So now National Commission of Backward Classes has similar powers with that of National Commission for Scheduled Caste and Scheduled Tribes, which were already made a constitutional body. So now we have 338, 338A and 338B dealing with 338B dealing with National Commission for Backward Classes. So please remember, before that it was only carrying statutory backing. Now it became a constitutional body. It also gave the power to NCBC by amending Article 342A that it can include or exclude some communities from the OBC list depending upon the backwardness. So this strengthened OBC reservation, OBC justice delivery. Why? Because now National Commission for Backward Classes has a constitutional status, meaning no simple legislation can take away its powers, and also it will reduce the political interference in OBC reservation policy, since constitutional bodies have a lot more power than statutory bodies. The next amendment that you must know is the 103rd Constitutional Amendment Act of 2019. Now, before this, my dear students, in India, reservation was either based on social backwardness or educational backwardness and never on economic grounds. For the first time in India, the reservation concept was introduced for people from economically weaker sections of the society of the unreserved category, meaning not the SC/ST category, OBC category, but the unreserved category. So the idea was whoever belongs to economically weaker sections from the unreserved category, they'll be getting 10% reservation, where in educational institutions and also in government jobs. Which category? General category or the unreserved category. Please remember, it was not applicable for SC/ST and OBC. They were excluded, and it is purely based on economic criteria. So certain criteria were established, for example, your annual income, for example, your land holding, for example, the house that you live in. Based on that, it was decided that people from economically weaker sections will be getting the reservation benefit. Please remember, it was first time in India that we have reservation on the basis of economic paralances. For this, Article 15 was amended and Article 16 was amended, which deals with right to equality. So as I told you, this was the first time that reservation was introduced purely on economic criteria, and this also raised questions to the 50% quota that was decided by the Indira Sahni judgment, in which it was said that the reservation should not exceed the 50% benchmark. However, this was overturned and EWS reservation was considered as absolutely constitutionally valid. So this was about 103rd Constitutional Amendment Act of 2019. The next amendment that you should know is the 104th Constitutional Amendment Act of 2020. Now, my dear students, when SC/ST reservation was introduced after our country got independent, it was initially done for a period of 10 years. And post that, after every 10 years, we have an amendment extending it further. The last time we had an amendment was extended till the year 2020. So to extend it further till 2030, there was a Constitutional Amendment Act that came up in 2020. That is the 104th Constitutional Amendment Act of 2020. The idea was to extend the reservation for next 10 years in both the Parliament and the state legislature. The year till which it was extended was till 2030. Now, an important fact that you must know is, before the 104th Constitutional Amendment Act, there was a provision to have seats reserved for Anglo-Indians. Who are Anglo-Indians? People who are Indian citizens but trace their origin to Europe. So anyone who traces their ancestry to Europe but lives in India can be considered as an Anglo-Indian. Now, before the 104th Constitutional Amendment Act, seats were reserved for Anglo-Indians in Lok Sabha and in State Legislative Assembly. But after 104th Amendment Act, it was discontinued, citing the reason that the population is very small and it is not absolutely mandatory to have a representation of the Anglo-Indian community in the Lok Sabha and the Legislative Assembly. This is, however, being debated, and there's definitely controversy around it, where some people think this should not have been done. However, for your exam perspective, remember that 104th Constitutional Amendment Act decided that the Anglo-Indian reservation will be removed and will not be extended further. The idea was political representation was continued, and it also ended the Anglo-Indian representation in legislature. Remember, every 10 years renewal, so one more renewal till 2030. Anglo-Indian reservation removed. Next amendment that you must know about is the 105th Constitutional Amendment Act that came in the year 2021. Now understand the reason for it. So in 2021, there was a Supreme Court ruling that said, which was under the Maratha reservation case, the ruling was that state governments will not have the power to declare their own OBC list. So what happens in India is we have OBC list maintained at two levels, one at the central level and one at the state level. So depending upon the state's understanding of which caste groups in a particular area can be included or should be included under the OBC list, there can be variation from one state to another. So with regards to employment in the state and educational institutions of the state, every state creates its own OBC list. Similarly, there is a list maintained by the central government, which is the central OBC list. Now, by this ruling, what Supreme Court said was that it is not the power of the state to have an OBC list. It should be done by the union government and the president, not the state government. Now, definitely, this created a lot of confusion. There was a lot of protest against it because the state's power to identify OBC was curtailed by this decision of the Supreme Court. So, to restore this power to the state, we had the 105th Constitutional Amendment Act, which said that definitely states have the power to identify and maintain their own OBC list in their own capacity. So, basically, to overturn the judgment that was given in the Maratha reservation case of 2021, this 105th Constitutional Amendment Act was introduced. It will also help you to remember that it amended certain articles of the Indian Constitution, that is 342A, 336, 26C, and 338B. Of course, it strengthened federalism because it gave states the control over their own OBC list that they should rightfully have, and it also helped in balancing center-state relations. So remember, there was a Maratha reservation case. Considering that case, it was said that states do not have the power to maintain their own OBC list. It created confusion, panic, protest movements because states were already maintaining a list which was used for reservation to educational institutions and also certain job opportunities in the state. Now, with this 105th Constitution Amendment Act, the power of the state to maintain their own list was restored. That is what you need to remember. The final and the latest amendment that you must know about is the 106th Constitutional Amendment Act of 2023, which finally gave reservation of seats to women in Lok Sabha, State Legislative Assembly, and the Legislative Assembly of National Capital Territory of Delhi. Remember, I am not saying Rajya Sabha, I am saying Lok Sabha, State Legislative Assemblies, and Legislative Assembly of NCT of Delhi. Remember, only these. The idea was 33% of the seats or one third of the seats will be reserved for women in these specified legislative bodies. This will also be applicable to already reserved groups, for example, scheduled caste and scheduled tribe. So there would be reservation within reservation, seats for the SCs and ST. Further, one third of them would be reserved for women. It was also said that this will be applicable for 15 years at one time, and if we want to extend it, we can extend it for next 15 years through a parliamentary legislation. It was also questioned as to when will it be implemented. So it said after this act, whenever the first census is conducted, after that first census of the act. So for example, act came in 2023. Whenever the next census is conducted and delimitation is completed, then we'll have the reservation applicable for next 15 years. So when is the implementation timeline? After the first census conducted after the commencement of the act, so that the delimitation exercise can be completed. Which bodies? The Lok Sabha, State Legislative Assemblies, and Legislative Assembly of NCT of Delhi. 33% reservation for SC, ST, women also. 15 years at a time, can be continued through a parliamentary legislation. An implementation timeline would be after the Act, first census, delimitation exercise. Also remember which amendments or which articles were amended or inserted. So Article 239AA was amended so that reservation can be given in Delhi Legislative Assembly. 330A was inserted to provide it for women in Lok Sabha. 332A for State Legislative Assembly, and 334A so as to ensure this duration for which it will be applicable, and to talk about specific reservation policies. For example, it will be applicable to SC/ST groups also. So my dear students, the idea behind this video was to give you a quick summary of important constitutional amendments so that very direct specific questions are asked in your examination. They don't dig in deeper into the article provisions, but they can definitely ask you which articles, what were the major changes, which year. So for example, last year, that is in prelims 2023, there was a question on 106th Constitutional Amendment Act. So it helps to at least know the latest ones and a brief and a few from the earlier ones as well. I hope the video was useful to you. Prepare well for your examination. All the best.